Hello, welcome back. It is time. It is another year. It is time for another year of Euphoria. Euphoria 2023, Season 11.
Jesus.
Episode 1. Why do we divide seasons by splits? I have no idea. We're going to rectify that now. I'm Drakos. Joining me is Caedrel. From now on, this entire year will just be Season 11. Hopefully you were not attached to the season system at all.
How long have you been here? For how many seasons? Season 1?
So I was here in the beginning,
you've been since the start, baby. You've been going to the gulag.
Basically what I did was I went to all the people who had who could give me money in Riot to make a podcast and said, have you seen Deficio? He's handsome and smart. And I just kind of held him up to different people with money until they said we could make this podcast.
So what was the pitch when you wanted me?
Have you seen this man? He's handsome and smart.
Oh, great.
Also, he embarrassed himself on a stage once. People really seem to like that.
You know what? I've thought about that. I've had a little ponder over that cancel meme.
Yeah.
You know what I've come to the conclusion of, because Baus actually
that it would
helped me
be
with this
inappropriate to say that you were the founder of cancel culture?
Also very true.
Yes,
but
okay,
I've
continue.
also come to another conclusion that Baus helped me with. That's the only mistake people can point out that I ever made in pro play. No one's ever highlighted any other minor mistakes. It's only one. So if you align me against people like Faker, who have made countless mistakes across their career, and you can maybe look at them, I've only ever made one. So technically, I'm a winner, not a loser. So that's the way I'm going to swing it from now on.
Wow.
I only ever made one mistake. Basically flawless at this point.
Yeah, at this point.
Big mistake, true,
dude,
but it's just one.
The Olympic gold in mental gymnastics over here. You are.
I'm waiting for the League of Legends.
You are reaching.
League of Legends Olympic Games.
Yeah.
I'll be like the queen, you know? Rest her soul. Jumping out the plane, flying down, dropping into my seat from the parachute, jungle seat, bang.
Why does that make you like the queen? Did she do that? Did I miss the year she did
the London Olympics? She didn't actually do it. It was I think it was Daniel Craig or something, or some stuntman did it. But he was dressed up looking like her.
Oh, it was probably Daniel Craig. It was probably James
it was James
Bond
Bondy, and it looked like the Queen. It was great.
Oh, there was an extra that was the queen. Yeah. Got it.
She didn't actually jump out the plane, mate. That would have been...
Yeah, I was like,
that
what?
That would have been... Jesus.
Anyway, believe it or not, this is a podcast where we talk about League of Legends and the LEC. This is coming out shortly, but this will be, I think, around the time that SKE happens, which is the season kickoff event for 2023. We're going to have a lot to talk about. SK. Yeah, but a bit biased, Riot Games, question mark.
No, they've got SK, SKP, and SKE.
Yeah, it's...
Jesus, sorry, it's gonna be a wild one today.
It's gonna be
loose, you know why it's a wild one today? Because normally we start the podcast about 9 a.m. and
we have to wake up, but
now it's 2 p.m.
It's 2 p.m.
We're in prime time, baby.
This is it. You want to know what we're like? We're 3 coffees deep, dude. Eyes deep, baby. Looking like a goblin over here. I'm ready to go. Oops, can't say that word.
You're looking fine as hell. You don't look like a goblin.
Thank you.
You're looking like a peak goblin. You're a supermodel goblin. You know what I'm saying?
I'm a hobgoblin, baby.
I'm the green goblin.
There it is. I'm Drakos Caedrel. Welcome back to Euphoria. Hopefully you like this part of the podcast. If not, I don't know why you keep coming back, but thank you for continuing to come back. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. As always, we've taken some time to shoot the shit, but of course, if you want to see more of us outside of this podcast platform, Caedrel will once again be co-streaming LCK and LPL this year at twitch.tv/Caedrel. Shout out to you. Making good content. If you're ever wondering how he knows so much about those two leagues, if this is the only place you see him, here or the LEC
Plus, it's
broadcast.
my only content.
Plus, it's his only content because Solo Q is slowly driving him insane.
I love Solo Q. It's great. Season 13. Yeah. Wow. Absolutely knees deep now in it.
Oh, yeah. And if you're bored waiting for the next LEC song, I released a song this off season. It's called OK. Drakos on Spotify. Banger. If you want to check it out.
Have you got more coming?
More soon TM. And we'll highlight it in the future.
What was Fine Line got 400k on Spotify?
Yeah, it took a year, but it got there. We got 50k in the first month here for OK. I was very happy with. So thank you to all the people who've been listening to me there. Music is fun. I love doing it.
When you're a rapper on stage, will you get me on for a little bar? Have you ever seen Alex, Dave and Alex at Glastonbury?
No.
So Dave was doing a rap and he brought up a stranger to do Thiago Silva rap with him. Very off topic. In Glastonbury, some random kid came up called Alex and he rapped the whole thing and the crowd loved it and he became famous from it. Well, not super famous.
But you're already famous.
Well, I become, people would be like, wow, Mark can rap, and then I'll get on a Kendrick.
People don't know your freestyle.
I'll get on a Kendrick EP.
Anyway. That's what I'm looking forward to. Aside from that, I'm looking forward to this episode. Now, let me just give you the overview of what this episode is going to look like, because we're essentially doing a 2-parter here at Euphoria. Every year, we start the season or every split, we start the season and we're like, we're going to talk about all 10 teams in a single episode. Now, if you've been here for a long time, you know we've literally never successfully done that, because what happens is we'll spend 30 minutes on Astralis, get to the end and be like, I guess it's time to talk about G2. And it'll be like 5 minutes. We'll be like, they're great. And then we'll just be done.
So we want to chop it up evenly, like a loaf of bread.
Yeah, we're splitting it into 2 episodes. In each episode, we're going to be talking about 5 teams each with some additional stuff on the side. So in this first episode, we're going to be talking about XL, SK Gaming, G2 Esports, Heretics, and Koi. So if you are interested in those 5 teams, this episode, you'll hear about the other 5 teams in the next episode. Fnatic fans, we're also having Yamato on for the next episode as well. So something to look forward to. On top of talking about these 5 teams, we have a brand new format in the LEC to talk about, as well as updates to MSI and World formats. These literally came out moments before us starting to record this podcast. Won't be super breaking, but if you've missed this news, big changes there that we're going to kind of loosely highlight. Both of us have just read the article. We did not know that this was coming. So we're going to be a little bit loosey-goosey on those changes. You'll make sure you want to read that article on lolesports.com. And then we got some Twitter questions and some stuff to talk about from you guys at home. That's going to make up this episode 1. But first, let's talk about the brand new format. Let's talk about LEC brand new format. We have 3 splits. This is the winter split we are going into, which feels so weird to say.
Picasso, I like it. 3 splits is a lot though. The show days have gone up.
Yep, 3 days a week broadcast now. Caedrel, Sunday, Monday.
Right, talked to me like, look, there's a lot of show days this year. Next year, 2023, you're going up by an extra 30. And I was like,
we love you. We want more
wait,
Caedrel.
Hang on a second. And I learned it was 3-day weeks every week. I actually think I'll start with one thing. The shift of days. Normally it's Friday, Saturday. Super week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now we're doing no more Fridays. I don't mind it too much. I actually like the Monday because what else? I don't really do anything on a Monday night, I'm going to wake up for streaming the next day or whatever you may be doing at home, work or university or studying or school. Whereas on a Saturday or Friday night, you always want to go out and see your friends, or maybe you want to go play games with your friends, or you want to do something, right? It's always the weekend where, you can have the next day off. And when LEC starts at like 6 or 7 p.m. on a Monday night, I think that's great, to be honest. When you have a show that you can just sit there and watch and, you know, you don't really have any other plans.
Well, and I think different people are going to have different schedules. We have a very non-traditional work week, because other people's, Wednesday is my Friday next year, for example. We have basically the same work schedule. And we take Thursday, Friday as weekends. But I think it's just always going to be different for people. We'll see how people like Monday. I hope people like Monday. I think the nice thing that we have going for us is we start later in the day. We start at the time where most people working traditional work schedules, traditional school hours are going to get off and be able to watch those things. And I think that's going to be sick. And I hope that makes it super accessible to people. Because I would hate to see, people not be able to watch on a Monday.
Yeah, like if they're at work or something.
That would be difficult.
Yeah, that would suck.
Anyway, 3 splits, and there's a lot of changes here. If you have not kept up on this, there's a wonderful esports ecosystem update. We're also no longer just the League of Legends European champion. We're the League of Legends EMEA championship. EMEA is Europe, Middle East, Africa.
Europe, Middle East, Africa. Yeah, that's it.
And we will, for now, all you need to know is welcome to everyone from the Middle East and Africa. Welcome to this beautiful ship that is the LEC. I hope that in time we will have more player representation from the TCL, or formerly the TCL, the LCL, in terms of, seeing more of those players on the LEC big stage and internationally. I don't have greater opinions on what that means for international or what that means for seeds, but, cool to welcome more regions into this. I think we have a pretty sick thing going here at the LEC.
We're going to slowly take over the world.
Yeah.
The LEC is just going to dominate. No, I like it a lot. Also, the TCL has become an ERL now, I believe, for EMEA Masters. So they'll have a slot there. That's not a complicated thing, but just back to the LEC format changes. I like the way they've separated it. So just getting straight into it, a lot of people complain about best of one. And I think by week 4, week 5, second round robin of best of one, it gets a bit boring because you kind of know who's going to win. And if they don't, it's just a fiesta anyway because it's a best of one.
Yeah. So quick recap. Phil, if you can throw the graphic up behind us. So it's 3 splits into a season final. So what used to be 1 split and then 2 splits, it's now 2 little of these new mini splits, 1 split and then season finals for how the year is made up. It doesn't really matter for you at home. Just follow along with us. The season will be easy. But each split is what's important here and what Caedrel is going to highlight. We used to do double round robin. We now do single round robin between the teams. The top 8 teams from that single round robin now move into a top 8 best of 3 double elimination. If you're a big esports fan, this is essentially a GSL bracket. Very simple. You win 2, you're through. You lose 2, you're out. which means that our actual playoffs, the portion of the season where we play best of fives, is no longer top 6, it is top 4. And that's the big change here, because even in Twitter questions, even interacting with people, people still look at it as top 6 and everyone else.
No.
But really, the way our split is structured now, the way our year is structured now, people need to be looking at it as, first off, can you just not be bottom 2 to make it to the next stage? This is the best of 3 stage, this double elimination. And then, can you make top 4? It's no longer, are you good enough to be in top 6? It's, are you good enough to be top 4? Which is a big shift, I think, in mindset for me at least, because it used to be like, oh yeah, this team could be 5th, 6th. But now when I say that, who cares? Who cares if you're 5th, 6th? It doesn't. 5th, 6th is the same as 7th and 8th.
7th and 5th, mate. I basically made.
I'm
basically 5th place.
You could have made it past best of 1.
I would have made it to the knockouts.
Just go back to pro, and you can make it past best of 1.
Sub me and someone give me a bell. Call me up. I'll be there in a heartbeat. No, so yeah, the way Drakos explained it is perfectly easy. I think the splits take about 6 weeks each. Best of 1 for 2 weeks roughly, best of 3 for 2 weeks roughly, best of 5 for 2 weeks roughly,
Yeah, I think it's I think it says here on the side of this graphic you can't see it. And again, there's the schedule's out, I believe, and you can take a look at this. This is a huge, massive overhaul. So
it's huge.
If we misquote anything, just know that we're misquoting it because we're misreading it, not because there's information that you don't have, because we're still learning how this new system is going to play out. But 3 weeks of round robin, 2 weeks of the best of 3s. And then it looks like 1 week of crazy best of 5s.
So yeah, like Draco said, after the 3 splits, there will be a big season finals, which is like the road show, I believe, where it's like we go on the road, we go to a big arena, we play big best of 5s. And little bit tidbits in the format. If you win a split, you qualify for the roadshow, right? If you win the winter split in March or whatever it is, then you've qualified for the big roadshow knockout stage, where we'll determine which teams are going to Worlds. If you win all 3 splits, you're locked in Worlds. If you win all 3 of them, you're locked in Worlds. If you win Spring, you're locked in MSI. There's a couple tidbits here and there, depending on who's going to seedings for internationals, but it's pretty simple and straightforward.
If you're a diehard format fan, there's a lot of little things here that you're looking at, but just remember that ultimately high seeding in every single split matters, because if you're not winning the split, then the remaining seeds that are not champions that are decided by championship points, which all you really need to know is you get more when you place higher. So the teams that have consistently placed well, even if they haven't consistently won, are the teams that you will be seeing in the season finals. Additionally, I thought we'd only have to talk about one massive format change today, and that would be the LEC. And this is the big one for listeners of this podcast, but because, this is what we do most of the year. But MSI and Worlds, huge overhauls. One of the overhauls being the LEC now has 2 seeds for MSI. Now, the second we saw this information today, we reached out to league officials on the LEC side to be like,
how do they get that?
How the hell do we get who's our second seed? We have to explain this to people. And they said, hey, don't worry. We'll have information. We'll have updates at the start of the LEC season. It's one of those things I imagine without, I do not work on this team, but it's one of those things I imagine where these big sweeping changes are talked about, they're theory craft, but until they lock in, they can't really make a plan. Now they're locked in. Now they're public. Now they get to go through one of many plans I'm sure they've prepped ahead of time, but obviously you want to make sure you announce them appropriately. You want to make sure that they are fair, because in the old MSI format, we just had our spring champions, which is our split 2 now. Remember, our first split is winter going, but now we will have a second seed at MSI, and it remains to be seen how that will be decided. But MSI, pretty crazy. This is a lot of information. If you're like, well, this is really dense, it's really dense for us too. We wanted to talk about all this stuff, but it is a lot, guys. Yeah. It is an entire year of LEC that has changed completely. It is MSI that has changed completely. It is Worlds that has changed completely. Overall, the quick TLDR I can give you on my thoughts is every single change is positive. I don't think every change is perfect. There are things that I will miss, but overall, this is a hugely positive change, I believe, for international events. The TLD, I think we shouldn't spend too much time on this because both you and I have only read this in a limited capacity. All you need to know is a lot less best of 1s. Essentially, group stages are gone, and we are now looking at a lot more brackets. Worlds will have Swiss. The 4th seed for LEC will now no longer be LEC's 4th seed. It'll be the West's 4th seed, and LEC and LCS will have to play each other in a best of 5 before the tournament begins to see who will get that. So we have essentially the return of BOTA, aka Battle of the Atlantic.
I preferred BOFA. But anyway, no, you're right. There's a lot of things that have changed. Quick one, MSI's in London. London is my city. England, up the boys, 2015 Worlds. We're back in action. Go down the pub, get a pint, and then pop over to the local best of 5. MSI, yeah, I think MSI was something like 58 best of 1s or something.
It was
in 2022.
And working on it, it was exhausting.
It was really tiring.
You got to see a lot of games, but sadly, you got to see a lot of the same game. I didn't love it. Obviously, the community didn't love it. Huge changes.
So I'm just looking at the website now. The bracket stage for MSI has 14 best of 5s already.
Yep.
That's more best of 5s than what MSI and Worlds had combined last year. So I think what they're doing here, right, is they're trying to include more best of 5 cross-regional play, which I think is really important. And they've thrown in a lower bracket at MSI. So you'll get more EU versus Korea, EU versus China, EU versus NA, and then just more teams, more best of 5s, more information as to who's good.
Yeah, and we can save Worlds just because it's so much later in the year. But just to clarify for MSI, there are 5 teams. There's 2 stages in MSI. There's plans and it goes straight into brackets. Brackets, the stage that Mark just talked about. That is a 8-team double elimination best of 5 bracket. Full double elim for MSI, which is an absolute banger. Similarly, plans a lot more exciting. It'll only be deciding 3 teams that make it up. We won't have everyone starting playing at the same time like we did this last year. The 5 teams that auto make it to the top bracket are the first seeds from all the major regions, plus the second seed from Korea.
Because they won Worlds.
The 3 teams that will remain to be decided are between all of the existing minor regions, as well as the second seeds from the LCS, LEC, and LPL. So
if you want all the information and like all the specifics, it's on lolesports.com.
Yeah.
If you want to know who goes where, what the seeding looks like, what the best 5s look like, the lower bracket, all that stuff, TLDR is more best of 5s, more cross-regional play, more teams at MSI from major regions, more fun and more action, I think.
Yeah. And obviously, as we get closer, you'll learn more and more on what it means for us. But also, I think this is just hugely exciting for international tournaments because we did not, even if the Worlds format was solid, and it was solid, I think the MSI format was not good, but the Worlds format has been solid for years. It is nice to do something new. And it's not just for the sake of doing something new. There are clear positives here, but as an esports fan, and many of you are who are probably listening to this podcast who have watched esports for years, it is nice to have a new format.
It's refreshing. Worlds is in Korea as well, which is going to be great. I can't remember when the last time Worlds was in Korea. I think it was when Fnatic made it, 2018 finals.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago now. I'm just excited for... I think you're right. It's like a breath of fresh air. We're not going to go through the bloody gulag of best of 1s, trawling ourselves through all of these games.
Yeah, and we're really privileged
trying to
here.
pretend that it means something sometimes,
Yeah. We have such sweeping changes domestically and internationally. Like, I think this is such an exciting year to be an LEC fan because even before we start to talk about our 10 teams or the 5 teams that we're going to talk about today, the format is completely different for LEC. I believe it'll be much better. Remains to be seen. We haven't tried it yet.
I think so too.
And then we go into an MSI that looks way better. Worlds that looks way better. I mean, it's just like...
it's more competition, and I think people love competition, and they love high-level competition.
Yeah.
So just the final touch on the LEC kind of format changes. A lot of people wanted best of 3s or best of 2s or more games between the top teams, but they didn't want to watch bottom teams crawl it out in best of 3s as well, because you could have a Fnatic versus G2 and viewership would be great and everyone will love it and it's a best of 3 and everyone's having fun. Then you have like a bottom tier team best of 3 and no one really cares, doesn't really mean anything. So this format just basically means it's quick paced to get rid of the bottom tier teams or the teams that will struggle in best of 3s, then get the best of 3s going. When we get our top 4, then we throw them in the best of 5s, double elim or whatever it may be, right? So it's a lot more high level competition, which I think people have been craving and have been preaching to Riot about over the last few years. And now they'll finally get it, which is important. You're not just going to get G2 and Fnatic 1 best of 5 and then they're gone. They're back for round 2, baby. And we had that kind of in our playoffs format, but now there's 3 splits of it and there's a massive tournament at the end.
Yep. And I think that the big thing to note about this format is that like all formats, it's in order to balance the needs of competitive and like what we want competitively, what we want to watch with running a studio and all this, there's always going to be a give and take. And the teams who do suffer, if you are a team or an org that finishes 9th and 10th in this format, you are playing 27 games a year. Now keep in mind, in the old format,
it's 36. The old
it was
format.
36 was the old format. So it's like fine. But also, if you are consistently getting 9th and 10th, bro, like put in more effort. And I feel bad for those players. Don't get wrong. I want them to have more experience, but I do hope that they can scrim these teams that are playing best of 3s, that they can stick around. But at the same time, I think that we've always seen in esports, there are some orgs that just consistently sit at the bottom. And if they aren't able to rally across 9 games in a single round robin to get out of bottom 2, because all you have to do is get out of bottom 2.
Yeah.
It is It's not top 6 right off the bat in 3 weeks. It is top 8. You really just can't be 9th or 10th.
The only argument I can bring up if I was an owner or a coach of a team would be like, why would you want me to invest in rookie talent to take a risk of getting knocked out after 3 weeks or 2 weeks? You know, I'm trying to train up these rookie players. If they're debuting on stage, they've got 2 weeks to make top 8 or they're out, right? So it comes to the point of like, wow, they've debuted for 2 or 3 weeks. Now I have to sit here for about 6 and twiddle my thumbs and just give them another chance, or do I
you talk
sign
about
veterans, right?
It's 6 weeks, right? So you're out after 3, you miss out on 3, and you're back in.
That's the only point that I could defend in a way, but you know, it's very rare to throw a team of like 5 rookies together, and it's very rare to see. I mean, it's not very rare, but in a business model, it's cheaper to get rookies, so you're more incentivized to do it, because then they can, you know, their worth will skyrocket, and you don't have to sign veterans who are later on in their careers and more expensive. But it can be risky in a format like this, of like similar to relegations. You know, it's like, do I want rookies and then get relegated? Do I want rookies and then be gone? Sponsors are on my ass. The team owners on my ass. The CEOs on my ass, saying, why the hell are we not on the screen? We're investing in rookies. Do we up the budget? Do we lower the budget? You know, it can get a bit complicated on a business side, but for a viewer standpoint, this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for it, and we'll see. It seems like across the board, obviously, this is, a partnered league. All these teams are partnered, and they were all a part of this decision.
Yep.
Don't know the details. I'm not a part of those meetings, but I would hope that people are happy, because I'm happy, and I think the fans are happy, or I hope that they will be happy. That said, 5 teams, 5 mostly pretty different teams. We're talking about Excel, SK, G2 Esports, Heretics, and Koi today. Where do you want to start?
Could start anywhere. I think there's a lot of changes on a lot of teams.
Yep.
We can start with Excel, because I've got it at the top of my little list here.
Okay. The thing I want to do for every team, because people like tier lists and we like clickbait. Before we talk about this team, I'm gonna write down a letter here in front of me.
Okay.
S
Dear
to D
Sir
tier.
/ Madame.
Dear Sir / Madame. Mit freundlich grüßen.
Mit freundlichen Grüßen.
I can use the whiteboard, I've been told. All
right, little whiteboard action going on. All right, you're going to have to save this for episode 2 then.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to write down where I expect Excel to be.
Like placement or tier?
We can talk about where we expect them to place,
Okay.
because I think that initial expectations will change, and then you're going to say yours out loud, and I'll reveal mine, and we'll see how close
it's
we
like
are.
a little bit of, what is that game where you both say the same word at the same time, Like an odds on.
Yeah. So S to D tier, so they can be S, A, B, C, or D.
Is Damon in D+ tier?
Only for their logo design.
I can't believe they've changed the name to D+. Yeah, for context, Damon Kia is no longer Damon Kia. They're called D+ Kia. Small rent. Let's carry on with the LEC.
We'll just have to join the POG state. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
What do you...
Excel. So is it S+ or is it S A?
It's just S, A, B, C,
Okay,
D.
A.
You put them in A, I put them in B.
B.
I put them in B. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. All right, I'll go first. So Excel, their top side is Odoamne, Xerxes, Vitio, right? You've got the Rogue / Koi top laner, the Astralis jungler, and the Misfits mid laner. Do you know what that reminds me of?
What?
2022 Fnatic. Wunder from G2, Razork from Misfits, Humanoid from Mad. And we saw a lot. I think a very good case study is Fnatic, because you take 3 players from 3 different teams which had different peaks, and they've learned the game in many different ways. And when I say learn the game in different ways, you often see pro players struggle to get on the same page. And the reason that is because they learn the concepts differently. They have different names for them. They're either more aggressive or more defensive in the way they do it. A very good example is, if I want to play for bot tier 2, it's a very simple concept called a shift. You push out mid, you move bot as 4, and you join your top laner or whoever's on the side, or as 3, whoever's on the side on a wave that's crashing. Now, do you do that after you've gotten vision or before you've gotten vision? Do you do that after they're showing on mid-wave, or do you just full send it on the bot tower, right? There's like minute things in what you learn and how you've engraved the way the game should be played in your brain that you can sometimes desync. Your top laner crashes the wave, and then they're getting vision, and you're like, wait, we're supposed to be hitting the tower. And then you need to just eventually get on the same page. And that takes a lot of time, because that's just one example of many. So I worry for their top side a little bit. If you take out the game part, you look at stability. Odoamne, really stable. Xerxes, very stable jungler, best player on Astralis. Actually, impressive play, despite them losing so many games. He was always even or ahead. Vitio was the shining light of Misfits, struggled to kind of carry all of them on this back. Neon helped out a little bit. And then just speaking about bot lane, Targamas from G2. I don't think he was much of a voice in G2, but he was a very good playmaker, roaming around, pikes his highlights. And I think Patrick's one of the best ADs and the carries we've got in the league. So I'm a bit worried for their top side and how they'll mesh. I'm a bit worried for the team as to who will be the voice of the team and who will be like the direction, kind of the person that points the finger. So I've put them in A tier. I think they have a chance of breaking top 4 just because of the raw star power. I don't think they're a super team. I think they're like a mini super team, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like they've taken the best players from the top teams. They've taken the best players from the middle of the pack teams and then trying to make that into some kind of super team.
Yeah, so to recap, in case you haven't been following, Ottawamne, Xerxes, VTO, Patrick, and Targamas is the roster here. So where I super agree on a lot of things, I think that a lot of the players on this team are like the unsung heroes of their respective lineups. I don't think it's fair to call Ottawamne an unsung hero, but I think Xerxes and VTO, obviously, we've sung a lot about VTO. I might as well just write a song about VTO. He was great last year. Him and Neon obviously putting the team on their back. Not that all of Misfits haven't had great performance, and it is a pleasure to see across all of these rosters the Misfits lineup kind of get picked up, despite the team leaving this league. But what excites me greatly about this roster is if we forget for a second that all League of Legends players are super adaptable and will adjust their styles. If we just look at how these players played last year, the things I'm really excited for is like Patrick is a rock and has been a rock across his entire career. You've had the pleasure of playing with this guy.
He's really great.
Ottawamne is also a rock. Xerxes is a guy who's historically been very creative, but I think was, as you highlighted on the straw, super reliable. And all of this gives so much room for VTO to shine. And that, to me, is what makes this team so exciting, is because we saw kind of the potential of VTO last year. But he was like, that team was an underdog at every turn. That team like didn't have expectations on their shoulders. And that's kind of part of what made Misfits so impressive, is that you just didn't expect that much from them. But now VTO's on a team where it's not like they're the scrappy rookies, you know, who with the rug getting pulled out from under them. And I think that this is an opportunity for him to prove that he is this like next generational mid lane talent, because he's kind of the only notable mid laner of his generation, right? Like we look at like we had the Niski generation, right, with Caps in it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we had like the humanoid Larson Nemesis generation. And now we have this VTO generation. And there's other players in our league that are going to look to make a name for themselves, but none of them have done so far. And so for me, it's really exciting to see if VTO can take that mantle. The other player that I'm really hyped about is Targamas. Now, Targamas, I think, was a little bit overhyped last year, especially after MSI, where he was roaming around and making these big plays. But I think that when both he and Flackid were figuring out how to play on a team, when they were, you know, when it wasn't like a rookie paired with a veteran in lane, it's hard to know what part of G2's bot lane struggles last year. And they had some great moments too, or their success, right? Was a result of which players or both players combined. But now that he's with a guy like Patrick, if you want to talk about the roaming style, if you want to talk about communication and calling and like the potential for him to just do what he did very well last year, which was leave lane and make plays in other lanes, like Patrick is the perfect guy for him to do that. So all in all, I'm very much with you in that I think that this team's goal should be making top 4, should be making final playoffs. I think that individually, these players are probably all top 5 in their positions. I think without seeing how anyone's playing in week 1, Ottawamne, easy call, Patrick, easy call, VTO, easy calls. They're saying Targamas, there's probably more debate for, but like VTO, Patrick, Ottawamne, like your respective laners, the respective carries on your team who are getting money are all probably even top 4 in their position.
There's something you brought up there. I think I can kind of see it. If I look at this roster and VTO in the middle, it kind of just looks like a better version of what Misfits was, you know? Like Irrelevant was almost like a weak side tank the gank kind of player. Excuse my... and Ottawamne, I feel like just does that better, you know? Yeah. You look at bot lane, Patrick and Targamas, it kind of gives me Neon Mercer vibes in a way, where Mercer could be a bit quiet, Targamas could be a bit quiet, you know? Later on towards the split, Mercer changed it up with the things like the Mumu as well. The only difference I see is Xerxes versus Zanzara, where Zanzara will just pick Poppy, Jarvan, Trundle, early gank every single lane, Malrank style in a way, and just try to get his laners ahead, even or ahead. But Xerxes is more of a farming jungler. Yeah. I played against Xerxes a lot. He's just a really creative jungler. He has so many pocket picks. He plays things like Warwick and Karthus and
he was the Rumble jungle guy, I think. Diana. He was the first real big Ivern player, maybe alongside Broxa.
When you draft against Xerxes, the only kind of threat that he poses in draft is you can't really ban him out. There's no point in picking jungle and then banning 2 on red side, because he will find something. Like if I do it with Lee Sin and ban, I don't know, like things like Xin Zhao and Poppy, he will find like a Hecarim or some champion there no matter what. So he's flexible. But he's also quite a farmer. He doesn't play things like Lee Sin or Jarvan. He doesn't play to early gank as much, I think. So maybe that could hinder the team a little bit, where Xerxes is a bit more focused on himself and his laners.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for the roster. It's hard to doubt these names on paper, and I don't think they'll have any egregious inside the game, no, outside the game kind of issues where the mood goes bad or the environment goes bad. I think having a good environment is very important, and there's not a name there that stands out to me as like this could be a toxic situation.
And I think this is one of the rosters that's easiest to see coming together on paper. And part of that is because I know, outside of Targamas, I know almost all of these players pretty well individually, and they're all really adaptable personalities. Ottawamne and Patrick and Xerxes especially are a trio that to me, it's like, if this team turns into the VTO show, and that's how they want to play the game, none of them are going to be the guys who get a chip on their shoulder and are like, no, but me, you should play through me. Like, if the meta demands playing through. I guess my only concern actually would be a meta where we're at utility mids, and we're back to things like Galio, Lissandra, whatever.
Play for side lanes.
And it's play for side lanes. That would be the only time I'm worried. That said, I trust Patrick and I trust Odo, but I think the best version of VTO that I have seen, and that is a very good version, that is a team that really carried so many of those Misfits games, is when he is on the Akalis, when he is on the Playmakers. Like when he got forced off of the Silases of the world and he was put onto Syndra, like you could see he was a very, very different player. Question
then. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Why B tier if you have so much kind of like praise for him in a way?
I don't feel strong. S tier is like, feels really...
Win split. S tier.
S tier feels only the win split.
Yeah.
And I feel like and I'm probably going to have 2 A tier at the end of the day. I'm rating these as we go. Okay. So I haven't built my full tier the way you have. And I think that the thing for me is like, it feels like roster is less of a sure thing. And also I'm hesitant to give anyone a clear S tier at this point, because I think the easiest one would be Koi, because they kept 4 out of 5. But even then, there's this feeling in the back of my mind, and I hate it because it comes up anytime Rogue, Koi, whatever come up, where it's like, was it a one-time thing? Was it a
one-time ting?
One-time ting. Was it not a fluke, because obviously they earned it. They absolutely smashed G2, but like, is this something that is repeatable for this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen lineups succeed in the past, replace one player, and then things fall apart. Down. Like, not to single out, but like an example is a good way. I don't want to be the person that attacks or anything, but just as an example, the way playstyles don't work together is just, the G2 situation in 2021 when they bring in Reckless, right? Yeah. Like the team it's working. Their regular season looks great, but it's just something's not clicking. And that can be down to playstyle, can be down to out of game. It can be like just the ideas of how the game should be played. And I think this could be our good segue to Koi.
Let's talk about
Koi. In the sense where it's like, what does that mean for Koi? Well, I think Shigenda...
So real quick, Koi, if we can swap over, exactly the same as the Rogue lineup last year. They've now partnered with Koi, Rogue together now. It's just Koi, Shigenda, Malrang, Larson, Comp, Trimby. So the same Rogue lineup that won last year's summer split, that went to Worlds, that made it to the bracket stage and got promptly 3-0, but we don't need to talk about that. Just replacing Ottawamne from Vitality with Shigenda. Go ahead.
So just to take that Reckless G2 comparison and say, like, what do I see Reckless as on G2? I see him more of as like a safe-ish player. He won't destroy in lane, but he will play losing matchups and go even. And he shouldn't be able to do that, but he does. And he's like a really solid rock, late game carry. He can play things like Jinx Tristana, for example, or he can play things like Senna, and that's a different style in bot lane. He doesn't maybe want to play things like Caitlyn and you just lane dominate, lane kingdom, full for bot, kind of rogue style, Koi style. So how does that compare to Koi? Well, Shigenda is, I think, quite different to Ottawamne in the sense that he is just a raw carry top. We saw him on Vitality a couple of years ago, I believe, where he was sharing time with another top laner. I can't remember off the top of my head.
So when Vitality was just going through all those rosters, because they swapped him in and out a few times.
And he does play things like Ornn, but just to read champions off the list for his 2022 season: GP, Gwen, Fiora, Renekton, Aatrox, Akali, Gnar, Camille,
Renekton
Kennen.
was really good.
That's his champion pool, right? And I haven't watched all his games in ERLs, but he was probably the best top lane in the ERL next to Cabochard. Him and Cabochard were just like the top of the tier, and Adam was also playing really well as well. He was still playing his Psycho picks. We'll get to BDS later on, but Shigenda was a standout. And I think Rogue now have changed their style. Odo could play, you remember the finals, he played Ornn into Gwen against BB, and he solo killed him under tower as Ornn, counterpicked by Gwen. That's reliability. Now you've got this kind of volatile top laner of like, I want a last pick top. I want you to blind mid. I want you to blind support. I need to counterpick. And that changes your whole dynamic because Malrang maybe wants to play more towards top side. Top lane can be a bit more, Armageddon in the sense that one carry matchup, Camille Jax will just swing in the other side's favor. So it's a different play style for Koi. How are they going to pull it off? I'm not sure, but I think it's a good step in the right direction. A lot of teams have taken risks on top laners. And if you want my brutally honest opinion, I think top lane in Europe is the weakest role in international events. I mean, we saw it with BB when he played things like Fiore into Nuguri.
100% agree.
Not to call him out too much, but he struggled in a carry matchup versus a tank and fell behind. And top lane has always been this weak spot of lacking carry potential. Odoamne against Khan, Damwon versus Rogue 2020, 2021, struggled a lot in things like the Lucian matchups. And it's just that adaptability is where we've kind of been, it's our kryptonite. So Shigenda is a player who is in that wheelhouse of carry tops. It's just a case of how well he can do it and how well can Rogue play around it, Koi play around it. A good example, final rant, is T1. When I watched a lot of T1's games last year, what's Owner's pathing? He always clears the top, lane ganks top, and then bases and top plays in isolation. He either gets a flash, TP out early, and Zeus plays the lane safely, and he plays it to get a small lead on the carry. Fantastic. That works.
And the thing I love about that specific example as well is that because he does it so consistently, and because even though you could argue that it's predictable, it's unless your jungler is also going top, your top laner has to respect it. And Zeus is also already so good individually that it just compounds that existing advantage, this knowledge in the back of your top laner's head that at any moment, Owner's going to get here. So even if I maybe somehow get that good trade versus Zeus, if I overcommit, I'm dead. So I have to just play back.
That trade means nothing. I'm going to get a push out anyway. And that's just an example of a concept that maybe Koi will look at and try to apply. Yeah. But then you also, there's a push and pull, it's just you put more resources in one basket, you lose it in the other. So now bot lane has to play a bit different on the first few waves. Maybe your Caitlyn Karma lane, now Shigenda has to give up a bit. They need to learn how to play with each other very well. And saying that sounds quite easy, but in practice, it can get quite difficult, because tendencies always shine through.
When the pressure is on, people resort back to what they know, what they don't have to communicate, which is the shit that they've practiced before this team, which is the stuff they practiced in solo queue. If they're a rookie, you go into habit, you go into muscle memory at this point.
And you need to, I think there's habit and temptation. Temptation is a dangerous thing. If you get a good trade on the enemy top laner and your jungler is bot and you're saying to yourself, enemy jungler could be here, but I actually think I have lethal. I think I have a kill. And you get sucked into that mindset of going for it and dying and losing a push out.
Feels very spiritual.
It's horrible. But you sometimes cave into it and just go for it.
And you're just damn, that apple looks great. Yeah. I would love to doom all of mankind.
And you're getting baited, but there's a small chance that he's fake pressuring you. An enemy jungler's on his gromp and he's saying to you, go on, I dare you. And you go for it and die, or you go for it and get the kill, whatever it may be, just resisting that temptation. So back to Koi, I put them in S tier personally.
Okay. I put them in A.
You put them in A? Fair enough.
I don't know if I'm going to have an S tier. I'm thinking about it more and more. I think it'd be really stupid for me to have an S tier at this point.
Fair enough.
Because I think Koi are our best team. Koi should be, on paper, our best team.
They should be. And it's ironic because at the start of last year, I thought Rogue, Koi would be B tier, A tier maybe. The Malrang playstyle, I thought would get shut down as well. Next to all these pro players interview saying it's going to run out. It never did.
Recap. We all thought that, maybe not we all thought, but the big things we were looking at last year were, if you were a G2 fan, the G2 rebuilding project, and you were looking at the Fnatic and Vitality quote-unquote super teams. That's what people were looking at. That's what we were looking at. That was, on paper, the biggest, strongest roster. Now this, as we've learned, this could be wildly different. I will say that it would be a massive failure for this team with so many components in the same place, with so much of the work of learning how to play the game together. Obviously, there's a new component that changes a lot. It would be crazy for them not to make finals in winter. In spring and summer, so much can change because the other lineups are going to grow, and they're probably in many ways going to grow at a faster rate because the only thing, it's going to be slow growth just to implement this agenda in. But we don't know how high the ceilings of the other teams are going to be. True. But at the start of the year, Koi should be our best team.
They should. And I think the wiggle room for argument is, let's say Odoamne was replaced by Wunder instead of Shigenda.
Yep.
Very kind of similar-ish playstyles, wealth of experience, they know what they're doing.
Just a Gragas instead of an Ornn,
exactly,
really.
Just a little cheeky Gragas, taking the dives, getting the double kills. You know how it is. An easy day at the office. The team would function almost the exact same. It's just this Shigenda change, which I worry that, are you going to convert Shigenda into Odoamne, or are you going to convert your team into a carry top team? That's the only thing they need to work on. But I think they have the best bot lane in the league. Comp and Trimby, I think, are hands down the best bot lane. There's bot lanes that can rival them, Just we haven't seen them yet.
Yep.
But as of right now, I think they're just so good, so flexible. Trimby's champ pool, comp's been so consistent. At Worlds, we saw it as well in the group stage.
Well, and also just in general, because in the past, I think it's been very easy to take the wind out of the sails of Rogue, now Koi. But Larson had some out of this world games at Worlds. He monstered in the playoffs last season. Like, these players, I think Malrang you can always debate. His impact is undeniable, but where you rate him on actual qualitative jungle, whatever, I'm not going to get into. I'm not a jungler.
You should see his stats, mate. He's negative everywhere.
I know.
Legend.
This is like, let's not have. But if I look at Larson, Comp, Trimby, top 3 is the lowest I would feel comfortable rating them in their respective positions. Now, you might say speculatively that there are players with higher ceilings or players that you believe will perform better. But in terms of what these players feel like they have should come in at the guaranteed highest level or near the highest level, top 3 coming into this season. Malrang is Malrang. Literally, I wrote notes for every player, and for Malrang, this is my note. Malrang is Malrang. Truly nuts, but damn is he good at what he does. Everyone else, 3-4 paragraphs. I'm like, what do I even say about Malrang anymore? That I haven't said, you know?
You either get the finals Malrang of the summer finals, or you get the Lee Sin versus JDG Malrang, where he's God knows what's going on with
no one knows. He just committed to the role play. He's actually wearing a blindfold. Nobody knows.
And the last thing I'll say about Malrang is obviously everyone knows him as his like psycho early game jungler, spam gank. Now, if the meta is in that direction, he will dominate. If it's in a farming jungler meta, where I feel like it's kind of leaning towards a bit, where we're seeing things like Graves and Wukong, is it going to go towards things like Lilia and Diana? If it does, then if I gank bot, I do a level 2 by gank bot, and the enemy jungler goes to my top side and takes my camps. If he's playing Trundle, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? A level up on Trundle, you're not going to carry. But if you're playing like Graves or Diana and you're losing your top side and they're 3-quadranting, even when you get kills, it's really not worth. So they need to be careful in which direction the meta goes. But yeah, I'm confident this team will still be up there.
And I think if we're going to give Sagenda that question mark next to Sagenda, is he going to turn into the weak side top laner that Rogue had last year or wanted from Ottawamne last year? We can ask the same to Malrang any year, which is Malrang is not condemned to the Malrang play style for the rest of his career. Like, he can show us a change at any time, but until proven otherwise, because we've wondered this literally every split, every playoff series, every best of 5.
Can't keep getting away with it.
The Jarvan's going to be in the back of my mind until he picks something else. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we're going to be thinking about. And it's not, again, condemning Malrang to this being the only thing that we're ever going to say about him. But until he shows us something different, he's shown us the same damn thing for so long. And I love it.
Yeah.
But just if you are a Malrang fan, you're like, but he's so good. Maybe he can change. Like, yeah, maybe he can. But until he does.
But Malrang will always have a special place in my heart, maybe the LEC's heart, just because of that one interview after they won the finals. And remember, I think Law was like, they're going to end the game. What did you do? How did you stop them? He just goes, I don't know. I just go in. Legend. You don't give a crap. Just get in there, boy.
So good.
So yeah, I rate Malrang. I think I was also skeptical at the start of this year. Like, is he really going to keep getting away with this?
Yeah.
And then eventually he kept getting away with it. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. You've proved me wrong. And I'm not afraid to sit there and be like, I was wrong. Respect. You've first Jarvan, then Poppy, then Trundle, and then we're still going down the list. Let Lee Sin. Let's cancel that out. Don't do that one again. But I like it. Picasso.
Yep. Okay. So at the end of the day, I'm giving him A. Caedrel's putting them in S, which I think is fair. If you are a Koi fan or you are looking at the LEC and you're not attached to anyone, I think Koi should be your front runners.
Welcome Koi.
Welcome Koi. Welcome Ibai. Welcome to the whole org.
Yeah.
It's sick. It's super exciting. I loved it. I love the show match they played that you met at Casted. I mean, it was fun. Good time. And I'm really excited to see what this lineup can do as they continue forward in the future. And Sagenda, like coming in on this, I think is a big opportunity for him. Pressure, team play style, whatever aside, I'm always hyped when players who have grinded, players who have been so close, get shots like this again. Because oftentimes we see players come up, they play on a not good team, and as a result, it becomes really hard to detangle what are their individual failings and what are the team's failings. So anytime you give a player like Sagenda this opportunity, and obviously he fought for that opportunity in ERLs. I don't want to take any credit away from what he did. It's a chance for him to rewrite his own story. And I think that is sick. I'm excited about that.
I agree. Last thing I'll say about Koi is something Jankos said on, I don't know if it was on stream, but someone told me about it. They said that Jankos thinks that whichever team has the strongest bot lane is more favored domestically, because that's just how Europe works. Like strong bot lane is everything. And if you go by that logic, I think Koi is pretty safe no matter what. Worst case, if things go, here's the fan, just put Shigen on a cheeky little on, get him on the Gragas, give him the ways of Odo, show him a couple bots, and just chill under his tower.
I would love to be wrong. But
I agree with that statement a little bit. I also think mid jungle in Europe is everything too, but I guess top is the least impactful role in Europe anyway.
The European team comp that just feels like it's been true for so long when Europe is at its best is tank engaged top laner, essentially only Ornn, because Ornn is just the best at what he does.
Legendary champ.
Ganking mid laner, or ganking jungler, carry mid laner, carry bot, engage support. And that just feels like if the meta is that for Europe, we're always like 20% stronger than we are in any other meta.
When it goes to like carry top, carry jungle, we're like...
Or like enchanter support. No disrespect to Trimby, because Trimby proved he could play enchanter support, so he had great moments last year. But as a whole, as a region, like Europe is great at the team fight, at forcing fights when they have tools to do so, but like
cheeky little ARAM gamers.
Cheeky little ARAM gamers, we were born in the ARAM, we die in the ARAM, when they want to play side lanes, we struggle.
Pike mid, baby.
That was the weirdest it got. Transitioning away, I'm going to save G2 Esports and Heretics till last, just because there's a little bit of intertwining there with the departure of Yankos, but we'll go to SK Gaming. SK Gaming. Irrelevant, Marcoon, Certus, Exakick, and DOS.
I like it.
Now, before we talk about this team at all, because I forgot it on the last one, but we'll remember it here. I'm not even going to write my rating. I'll just say my rating because I've got my rating in my head. Yep. What do you rate this team?
C tier.
Yeah, I think C's fair.
C tier. Yeah. I think it's all right. I can see it going poorly, and I can see it going pretty well actually, because they've taken a little bit of a risk on bot lane. If I was a coach of a team and you said to me, do you want to run back Jesu Treats for another split another year? I'd be like, or take a risk on a bot lane. This LDLC bot lane was on EU Masters finals. They lost to, I think it was K-Corp in spring. So they were at the top of their game in ERLs. Exakick's quite a hyped up, I don't want to say prodigy, but he's been hyped up quite a lot by the community. He's always been regarded as a very good AD carry, very solid AD carry, one of the best in the ERLs. Take a risk, And as much as DOS is a bit controversial at times, does say a little bit of stupid things on social media here and there, is regarded as toxic. I don't think he is toxic. A lot of the players I've spoken to, maybe in solo queue he is, a lot of players he's played with on a team have said positive things about him. I just had a little bit of an ask around, and they said he's a good teammate, good player, and overall, DOS has been very high on the solo queue ladder, if you want to be realistic, for a while.
And DOS is another player like Agenda, who I feel like didn't really get his fair chance to shine in the LEC. For those who don't remember, he was swapping time with DOS and Denick, or DOS and Denick were swapping time on the Misfits lineup, and kind of DOS was supposed to be the better player, but Denick ended up being the more vocal player, as I remember from what the staff told me, and that ended up being what the team needed, and he didn't really get... The team's results weren't great regardless of who was playing, to be honest. They were slightly better with Denick, so DOS didn't really get a fair chance on the LEC stage, and now he's coming in, I think, with a lot more hype behind him, because as you said, the LDLC bottom lane were very good together. And they've stuck together. I think it would be more of a question if we were seeing DOS on their own or Exakick on their own, but because they're playing together again, it's easy to see how they would bring a lot of that synergy together. Talking to Lore, she said a lot of their strengths in aggressive. These are super aggressive laners, which I think is going to be a necessity when you look at the bot lanes that are coming in. We just talked about Comp and Trimby. You're looking at, for G2, not to skip ahead, but you're looking at a Hansama Mickey X bottom lane that, if we assume they'll get back to their ceiling, were known for being a 2v2 kill lane. You've got a Hillisang Karzi lane, which is going to be the biggest coin.
We can
say that for next episode, but you see what I mean? Like, you cannot be the kind of lane that just rolls over and dies. You have to be the lane that's ready to fist fight.
Yep. I'm excited for Exakick and DOS. They played with Yike, who we'll get to later on G2. But I like the risk idea. Just flip it on the bot lane. They could be superstars, they could be mediocre, they could be bad. Whatever it may be, just take a risk. And they've taken that risk consciously because they've taken Irrelevant, which we talked about a little bit earlier on, who is on Misfits, was just you are going to soak as much pressure as possible. You're going to blind pick top in the first 3 or whatever it may be to make it so we get better matchups mid and bot, and you're going to tank it all, and you're going to play Ornn, and you're going to be safe. And Irrelevant's good at that. It worked for Misfits. Neon picked Sivir, VTO picked Syndra, whatever.
Irrelevant survived for such a young player. He did a surprisingly good job of absorbing pressure. There are so many other rookies we've seen come into this league that just get bodied by more veteran top laners. He did surprisingly well.
Yeah, and the times that he got put behind, he recovered quite well, I think.
Yeah.
And if he wants to come out and play Camille Jax, props, go ahead. You do you, King. But I can see where they're doing it. Take a risk bot, have safe top. And then I think the star of the lineup for me is Markoon.
Sure.
I actually think that he was a really good jungler last year, when they were so close to getting to the next round. They got reverse swept by Fnatic. There was a lot of what ifs around that XL roster if they kept going forwards. And there was a lot of like shining lights in those games where you're like, it's sad to see them get knocked out already, even though they're already in the lower brackets. They're taken out, they're gone.
He's the kind of jungler I feel like you can bet on because he plays that jungle style. He is active early game. He's not afraid to play carries. And he was a part of that XL lineup that I think a lot of us expected more from, partly because every time you talked to any pro ever, they were like, XL is murdering people in scrims.
Crazy.
And then it just never transitioned to stage. So to see him on a newer lineup, not surrounded by nearly as much veteran talent, but in another kind of younger roster where he can maybe take more of a leadership mantle on his shoulder is like huge. Again, rebirth potential for Markoon, continue his story past just being a really good, aggressive early game jungler on Excel. Like Markoon is one of the reasons that I really can believe. Like I don't know enough about Exakick and DOS to know how well they're going to transition to LEC. That's always going to be a massive question mark.
Yeah.
Certus did not have a great season or a great year last year. He had some really shining, redeeming moments. He had a good Akali game. He had a great week. SK had some good upsets. But SK was such a mess as a team, as a whole. Again, it doesn't feel fair to condemn Certus to like, oh, you're bad. But I also say that he still, I think, has to prove himself before we can know where he stands. Now that he has what feels like a more deliberate, a more focused team built around him.
I think what we often see at times with these players, I'll bring Dior into this conversation as well, is Dior had great performances on Vex, but when the team is out of contention, their players just play better. Like Certus and Dior, I think we're in the same boat of like, we are now out of playoffs. There is no pressure or nerves or expectations or stakes. Let me just play my game. And you see good performances. You see Certus play well. You see players like Dior play well. And you always wonder at the end of the split, like, what if, But it just comes too late. And I think that's just the last push over the edge to make them play on that level. So Certus still needs a lot of time to grow. Overall, I don't know. I don't have the stats on me, but I feel like this is probably one of the youngest rosters in the league. Like Irrelevant, Markoon, Certus, Exkick, DOS are all quite young. I think DOS is probably the eldest of them all.
I don't know about age because I just don't know player age. It's not something that I check until Worlds comes around and we like to throw it around like fun facts. But like in terms of actual games played in the LEC, very young. Like in terms of actual LEC stage experience, super
So
young.
this is the roster where it's kind of like the world's your oyster, Hopefully the coaching staff can like implement good fundamentals because oftentimes you see rookie players or a team of very young players without a veteran, the fundamentals fall apart and the games just are lost in 10 minutes because you do not have a foundation upon like veterans just knowing exactly what to do and how to bring the game back or how to stabilize a game, because you always get lost in the mind of like going for risks, and rookies love to do that and they love to make pop-off plays or they like to do flashy things or they overthink things and they get too aggressive. So they need to make sure that they have a solid foundation so that these games are not just lost and they can actually think through the game rather than getting carried away in the game. There's no person on that roster like, an Odo Amni or I don't know, like a Yankos or someone to just calm everyone the hell down and find a direction.
Well,
so
and
that's the only word.
And no one that we know in that capacity. There's always a chance for that person to rise up and to become someone on that lineup. Maybe it's Markoon, maybe it's someone like DOS. And we'll have to see. This is my thing though. As much as we're like talking about optimism for this team is probably making top 8.
Yeah.
Fighting getting in there. But at the start of the year in the winter split, it's not, in my eyes, fair to expect much more from them than that. I think they can have a good showing and some of the best of 3s in round 2. But right now, when you look at their individual players, Markoon, maybe breaking your top 5 junglers lists. Maybe he's just outside of that. Irrelevant. Again, top lane pool not the strongest in EU, but I don't think he's on that list. Certus, probably not on that list for people. Exik and DOS, obviously just going to be a question mark until we see more from them. So it's like, just on paper strength alone, they're not cracking top 4.
No, I think they'll be battling BDS for top 8. I think those two will be the teams will be fighting each other to get into top 8. Maybe not so much knocking each other out, but I think BDS is in a similar boat with just more expertise. Like, you know, players have been to Worlds, you have players like Crown, you have been, in multiple teams and have like revamped teams. So I just think they're young, fun, and enjoy yourselves. And I think they'll push themselves into the top 8.
And I'm excited to see what this team does across the first season. I hope that they are able to make top 8 for their sake. And then I'm curious what they look like in spring, because I think that this is a team that with some time to grow, we don't know what the ceiling for a lot of these players looks like. If we do know what the ceiling looks like already, then this is dire already. This is not going to be a great team. But I would like to think that all these players are young enough that they still have so much more to show us. And this is a team that is going to be, maybe they hit the ground running, preseason prep can always mean that some teams can hit the ground running, but in general, this is more of a long-term thing for me.
Also, quick thing for everyone watching at home, YouTube specifically, not so much on Spotify, drop something in the comments. I want to see your tier lists in the comments. I want to see where you would rank these teams, S, A, B, C, D.
I like that.
You can throw in all 10 teams as well, because
put
maybe
it on
that's...
this episode or next episode.
Yeah, put it on this episode for all 10. And then
Sure.
maybe next time you guys can have a look at them. Instead of Twitter questions, just see other people's ratings.
Yeah, shout out to the YouTube gang. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, YouTube gang, get involved.
You guys have nice things to say.
Yeah, get involved. Let us know what you think. Right. Should we move to Heretics? Because I think we can go from the young guns to the good old people that have been around the block.
People are known. Okay, so Heretics, big again. They bought the slot from Misfits, new org.
Welcome Heretics. Another Spanish org.
A lot of Spanish blood, baby. Let's go.
I think it's run by a big Spanish content creator. I don't want to butcher his name, but I think it was Greg F. Something like this.
You could tell we did a research. I'm going to be honest. We care about the teams, the players.
Yeah.
The org side, we love you guys. We appreciate you. We love that you are investing in esports, and we'll try to do better at learning your names in the future. Because I forgot to shout out Ebuy with Koi.
Yeah,
but like,
Ebuy, big brand behind Koi, pushing them forwards. Greg F is the person behind Heretics, pushing them forwards. Another familiar face that maybe some of the OGs will know from Heretics, who's a content creator for them now, does a lot of their league stuff, is Werlib.
Oh yeah, Werlib.
Werlib is old school Giants top laner. He was on Fnatic a little bit.
Turned into, and it didn't have like the craziest career in the LEC or in the EULCS at the time.
He was around for a long time, though.
But it was a long time and is a wonderful content creator.
Yeah,
awesome. Is sick at what he does.
Shout out to Werlib. Heretics. Evie from DFM.
Yep.
Yankos from G2. Ruby from Unicorns of Love.
Who is just to be clear, if you do not know him, he's also a player from Korea who has played in the PCS as well as the LPL. So
really? Okay, yes. You can give me all the deets on him then. Jack Spectra from Heretics and Mursa from Misfits. I'll start a little bit with bot lane and then we can move our way up. Because I just want to touch on Jack Spectra quickly.
Sure, yeah.
So Jack Spectra has been hyped for around a year or two now.
It's been a while. He was expected to be the Reckless replacement. He was expected to be... He was supposed to go to K-Corp before Reckless went to K-Corp. Jack Spectra has been the kind of the expected next in line of the 80 carry prodigy title for a very long time.
I don't want to sit here and say I know him very well because I haven't spoken to him a lot, but I've watched his trajectory quite often. He has been at the top of solo queue for a long time. He often, if you ever want to spot him out, he has like his little 0 at the end of his name. So his name will be like Pride with a 0 at the end. So that's, how that's Jack Spectra. He has a lot of different in-game names around that area. He also does a lot of streaming. He does a lot of content creation before he actually joined the LEC when it comes to like playing different roles, jungle to challenger, mid lane, all the way up to whatever it may be. He did a lot of different ones. I don't know the exact ones. And he, I think, was probably ready for the LEC around a year ago, before this year in Heretics. But I'm happy that he's waited a year. And I'm happy that he didn't get the opportunity until now. And that might be a bit mean to say, but I say it from a good place because I think oftentimes you see players who are hyped, thrown into the LEC, they're out after a split. And they're not given their chance properly, or they're done dirty on a bad team, or they just lack that extra year under their belt to know how to handle emotions or pressure or certain game states. And I think he is now at the right blossom time to throw into the big leagues.
The right blossom time. I love it. Yeah, I think it's always best if you can come in at the start of the year on a team like this that is completely rebuilt, that has to learn how to function from the ground up. Because that is, when people are subbed in from like last year's format, from spring to summer, I think that's always putting you at a disadvantage because you're bringing in the baggage or the positives, right, from the split in the past. You're carrying whatever was with you there before, and you don't get a fresh start. Sometimes that can be a boon. Like if you just join a team that's winning and everybody loves each other, it's really easy to get into that mood, right? But that rarely happens.
Yeah.
More often than not, you're joining the team that's probably a hot mess. Yeah. And like, what are you supposed to do?
You're supposed to be the god
You're trying
savior
to figure
of everyone.
out, which way is up in the world of LEC scrim weeks and trying to get everything down, trying to see what of your ERL, experience transfers.
Yeah.
And and it's just burning down around you. I think that's so hard. So I agree. I'm glad that he is getting a big opportunity here on a fresh lineup.
Yeah, he's also been screwed over so many times by different teams. So welcome, Jack. It's about bloody time he's here. So I'm excited for him. I think he will do really well. Maybe some touch on game stuff. He really likes to play things like Draven, Kalista, Aphelios. That's really his bread and butter. They won EU Masters summer, Heretics. So that was a big step for him in his career. And I think that's a good note to end on. Interesting, though, because we often see like Elioya, good example. EU Masters play-ins knocked out. Joins Mad Lions the next split. MVP.
Yep.
Absolute beast jungler, him and Inspired going toe to toe, Goku Vegeta style.
Yep.
Reverse sweeping
Love
kids
it.
left and
Love
right.
it.
So it's great that he's won, but there's always those little gems hidden underneath, in the planes and stuff like that. So we'll see how other teams do. And Ruby could be one of them. I don't actually know a lot about him at all.
I don't either. I looked at his history. I looked through his match history. I watched 1 or 2 of his games. I don't have strong opinions on Ruby yet. I will say that one of the things that makes me very excited about Ruby is how many different leagues and regions that he has played in, even if they were for shorter periods of time. There's a lot of names you're not going to recognize. A Freak of Freaks is a sub back in 2017 is one that you'll probably know. Recently won Prime League with you well. I just in general, I'm excited about this guy, but I'll tell you why specifically I'm excited about him. And it actually has nothing to do with Ruby. It has to do with their coaching staff because Heretics has Peter Dunn. And I have talked to Peter Dunn about about like how he scouts, and some of it is unintelligible nonsense to me. That man does a lot of very specific things that I don't entirely understand, but his track record is sick. His track record is nuts. He worked on EG. He worked on Mad/Splice. These are orgs that have found some of the best talent in the last few years. So I'm not going to tell you 100. If I did understand 100% what Peter Dunn was doing, I could tell you whether or not this is like a Peter Dunn specialty find. I don't. But I will say that anytime there's a new player like Ruby that I'm uncertain of, I'm now willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because the man that helped find him in this context is a guy with such a track record for success.
So I'm going to leak something right now because I actually love it. And I think this should be public information. I don't think it's a big secret at all. So over the last few years, there's been a lot of, I don't know what the word is, programmers, software developers. People have designed this big, massive program, and different teams have different ones. And what it does is it takes all the players on solo queue ladders, EUS, Korea, NA. It looks at all their games, takes all their stats from every single one, even the smallest things of like, how often do they roam around their junglers? How often do they leave their lane? How lane percentage, how close are they to their bot lane? How many times have they warded? How many times are they next to their support? What's their positioning like in certain fights, like heat maps, everything. It takes all of their stats and gives them a ranking. And I saw it around at the end of last year when I was looking into coaching and when these teams are looking at certain players and had players like Caps on there and Faker and Chovy. And for example, Chovy was at the top of the list for like CS numbers in solo queue. It was raw data, CS numbers, average farm, like last hitting, how many did he miss? How many did he miss in lane? How many did he miss in side lanes? Every stat you could ever imagine and a ranking. And he was top of the list, right? And you would see certain players like, I think a good example of like volatility. Leader was quite high up there.
Yeah.
Lots of kills, lots of deaths, volatile lane phase, good thing, bad thing, reasons why in stats. And I just think that scouting has got to a point where all these programs are so helpful because you can draw conclusions by watching the game, but you can also draw incredibly good stat conclusions from these massive software things that all these teams are developing to find the next gem. And you can see all these like little names, like random just nitpick names you've never heard of next to players like, Caps or Humanoid or all of these things. And to some players, solo queue means a lot. So you can take that information and actually apply it. Some people, they don't really give a shit about solo queue. So a lot of the information is kind of useless, but I think it's a great system and tool that teams have. And I don't know if the public know about it, but it's really cool. So if you ever, I don't know if there's any coach out there that wants to show it or like give a little sneak peek of like 2020 or 2021 analytics, give it a show. I would love to see it again. It was really cool.
Yeah. And I think that, Peter is a guy and that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to in this context again to bring it back. And Ruby is a player that I'm excited for. I don't know where to rank Ruby. I don't know what to expect from Ruby in the context of this team.
So I did this on my stream a couple of days ago. A lot of people say Ruby's really good. There was a lot of like praise towards him. EUmasters, he was great. I looked at his champ pool, very control magey. I want to say like Nemesis style. Okay. A little bit of Vagar, a little bit of Kassadin, a little bit of Corki, Azir.
That's what you mean by Nemesis style.
That kind of wheelhouse.
Kassadin came in. All right.
That kind of wheelhouse of like control magey, even a little bit of Aatrox mid, so flexibility as well. But it sounds like, I'm just looking here, 24 years old, he's been in the LPL, you said, been in the PCS, stuff like this, been subs in Korea. So he has a wealth of experience, and I think that's pretty important. I think that's really good. They've not taken a risk on any kind of rookies, and they've gone for Ruby. So I think stats look good. That's the only information I can go off. But excited. I think there was 3 imports from Korea last year, I believe. There was Haru, Younghoon, and Malrang. Now I think that's gone up a bit with players like Ruby coming in, Photon, Bo, Chasey. I think the imports have gone up, so we'll see how they all do.
Evie,
Evie as well, of course, from Japan. Not sure what to think about Ruby. Then you get to the top jungle.
Wait, real quick on Mursa.
Oh yeah, quick Mursa. Yeah.
Mursa, great Leona,
yeah.
great Amumu, great engager. He is one of the people that I think when Misfits were winning games, not on the back of just VTO popping off, he was a huge part of a lot of those games. Now, he had some incredibly grief games as well, don't get me wrong, but Mursa is a guy who I think when he was playing well, specifically on champions like Leona, looked very good, looked very promising. He had the pleasure of playing around Neon, who is a much more veteran AD carry. And I am curious to see what he will do with Jack Spectra. I'm excited to see Mursa again. I thought he was very talented, but I will say that he remains a question mark outside of the context in which he played with Neon. Because again, I know from listening and watching so many bot lanes, listening to comms, there are bot lanes that are both players contributing and talking and planning and thinking. And there are bot lanes that it's like one genius puppet master and the other guy is just hands. You know what I mean? And so haven't heard Mursa comms, don't know where Mursa ranks, don't think that he's, being shadow puppeted.
No.
But I think it remains to be seen.
Jack Spectra played with a support called White in Heretics. His most played was Leona.
Yep.
Champion pool you could probably align it pretty well with Mursa throughout the year. And you can argue support meta, but checks out quite well on the exact same kind of champion pool. So I think in terms of picks, I think they'll be all right. I think Jack Spectra is a very critical person, so they'll be very talkative in like how they fix their bot lane. So those two will have a lot of room to grow. I'm excited for it. Mursa's got a little bit of experience, so that'll help them out a lot. And I think in terms of like macro game, Jankos will help them a bunch.
Jankos, the man of the hour. We got to talk about
that's
the
beauty of it. They can just focus on their lane. Jankos will handle the rest. And I think, I don't know if it was Perks who said this on a Thorin podcast or something. He was talking about how important Jankos is and like how vocal he is. And I've listened to G2 comms a lot. And I see that he is, when there's silence or there's downtime or people are not sure what to do, he asks questions on the spot. And that's so important. I would teach that to every jungler that I'm ever coaching. What's your lane state like? What do you need? What are we doing next? Even the bigger picture things of like, we're in the mid game. What's the next objective? How are we playing for it? How should we fight? These are questions that Jankos asks a lot.
Yeah, he contributes a ton in game to comms, not just in the logical sense of asking questions. He is, as long as I have been watching Jankos scrims, he has been communicating his intentions on where he plans to path, where he wants to go, where he expects the enemy jungler to be in the early game. That stuff's more standard. A lot of junglers will do that. But then in games where they're losing, he'll sometimes be the first one to crack a joke. He'll be the guy to lighten the mood. He is such a like Swiss Army knife for communication in a team. And outside of like one or two rosters where I know he had some really rough personality conflicts, this guy feels like the best rock in Western League of Legends. Again, just don't know enough about Korea and LPL. I don't speak Chinese, don't speak Korean. The best rock I've seen in Western League of Legends of any team ever. This man is a GOAT. He is one of the goated Western League of Legends players, no doubt.
So smart. Do you remember that Misfits base race where Jankos in the comm says buy pots, buy GAs, buy stopwatches?
Yep.
And like everyone's selling things to buy it, and that actually won them the game.
Yep.
Like he's on it, and that's important. A lot of people can get overwhelmed, where like they focus on themselves, they're a bit nervous, or they want to focus on their mechanics, or it's oftentimes mid laners are the ones who do that, or AD carries who like want to focus on their game, and they get a bit overwhelmed when it comes to Jankos to do it on anything. You'll just take over, you'll take the reins.
That said, Jankos, communications, human, teammate, great. In game, we know when the meta is ganking junglers, Jankos is one of the best, if not the best, in our league. When the meta is not ganking junglers, when the meta is carry junglers, his performance can be very up and down. Without knowing what the meta looks like, I do still expect a decent amount of ganking junglers, but without knowing what the meta will look like, it'll be hard to know how Jankos will perform as an individual. But for Heretics as a team, for this roster over the course of the year, having Jankos on this lineup is just like a massive buff.
Huge pickup. Absolutely massive pickup. I will say, I think one of his best carry junglers from what I've seen I've played against is probably his Graves.
Yeah.
That's probably up there. But I think the biggest exposure we saw of Jankos was 2020, because I remember I was playing that split and it was set Volibear Trundle meta towards the end of summer.
Yep.
Worlds came, it was Nidalee Lilia Kindred Graves meta. And that's where EU was like, oh crap. I remember Shadow was there as well and stuff like this.
Do you remember? Because this was really funny, is that people saw that meta in Korea, tried to bring it in at LEC, and then Jankos was, I think, the one who went back to set in Sejuani and found way more success domestically.
Yep.
But I think it was just because our junglers were bad,
Yep.
and he was just so much better on Sejuani and set individually that he just balanced out what should have been a meta that favored those things.
And that's how they won the split, wasn't it?
And that's how they won the split.
Yeah. And then they went to Worlds and he did play the carry junglers anyway.
And then they got blasted because there was just nothing they could do because the Korean junglers were so good.
And I don't want to sell him short and say they made a world semis, right, that year.
Yeah, no.
He wasn't terrible at it. It's just he is so good on the ganking junglers that if it isn't that kind of meta, I think Heretics are my dark horse to succeed.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. You've got rookie bot lane, which is destined to be here, a mid lane, which we're very unsure of and skeptical about in terms of what we expect from him, but seems to have a plethora of experience. And Jankos, one of the best junglers. The best jungler Europe's ever had. And then you've got Evie,
which is kind of here to round this out.
Well, how's Evie?
Evie is the most random pickup I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, I've had the pleasure of casting Evie since 2015. When he joined Seventh Heaven, when I was casting LJL at 3 a.m. in the United States.
You're an OG LGL.
I'm an OG LGL
caster.
caster. I joined the season that they started importing Korean players like mad.
That was 8 years ago.
That was, dude. Yeah,
you were casting LJL at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it was rough. And then I'd go work at a coffee shop at 6 a.m. It was dark. It was a dark time in my life. Yeah, it was a great time because eventually got me to where I am today. But it was not a healthy time in my life. That said,
were you casting from the States? Were you? I guess.
I was casting in. My roommates were pissed because I'd cast in my bedroom at all hours of the night. And I was just lucky that they were degenerate gamers like I was. So I just had to wait. The WoW patch, I think, came out. I think Warlords of Draenor came out around the same time. It must have been Warlords. Yeah, at the same time. So they were up till 3 a.m. anyway, or 4 a.m. anyway. So they didn't care. So
that's that grind set, baby.
God bless. They're gearing up. They're 40 mans or whatever. I don't know. Man, I haven't played WoW in forever. Anyway, so this guy has been a legend forever. He eventually joined DFM, which is the one true and eternal LJL super team that is and seemingly always will be. The thing you need to know about this guy is that he's super good, he's super consistent, and when you watch plans, a lot of different caliber of player, but Evie is one of the guys that when you look at him individually, you can consistently say yeah, this guy looks like a world-class player. How he will stack up against other top laners domestically, I think remains to be seen. Would I have put Evie into the LCK or the LPL? Probably not. Do I think he could thrive in the LEC? Absolutely. Things you have to look out for. He likes very specific picks. He does not have a super weird champion pool, but he does have pocket picks. Urgot, one that has to be watched. Gnar is super vanilla. Everybody plays Gnar, but his Gnar is also something that you have to respect. In general, this is a guy who finds angles, creates plays. You can look at him if you've ever watched Hylissang play Rakan, where he'll commit for an angle and stand in a bush for 30 seconds, Evie can do the same thing on a Gnar. He can manage his rage. He can find another angle. He's a super creative player. I do not know how he will function outside of an LJL team. I do not know him well enough. I do not know his language capacity. I do not know how he will fit outside of a roster that he has played with for so long. But in terms of what this guy's ceiling's like, everyone gets to watch it just about every year at Worlds because I feel like there has not been a single Worlds where this guy has not performed. And pretty much forever, this is the team that comes as DFM. So Evie, really excited, tons of potential, clearly a high ceiling, very veteran player. So I don't know how much further he will go than that ceiling. But if he's hitting that ceiling, he should be a competitive top laner with the other EU tops.
I got a lot of thoughts on this. So I'll try to say it as blunt as I can.
Yeah.
If I was a coach of a team and you gave me those 4 players, would I import Evie?
No,
I wouldn't.
Absolutely
He
not.
would be lower on the list. But then I think
he wouldn't be on the list because I wouldn't consider it.
I wouldn't even consider it.
It's nothing against Evie. It's just why would I go there?
Exactly. Why would I go there? I would go, LCK Challengers, LPL, LDL, I'd go through all of that list. And then I dig deeper into it and I think about it more. What are some of the best performing imports in the last few years? First one that comes to mind is someone like Berserker or Malrang,
Yeah.
Players that are either substitutes or at the beginning of their careers and they have a lot of hunger. So that when they are imported from a stronger region to a weaker region, they want to dominate the hell out of that region. Oftentimes we see, veterans. We'll exclude players like Quadra J and Impact, for example. Veterans that win Worlds, they've hit peaks of their careers and they're going from such a high to such a, not so much a low, but, lower quality that they lose interest. They've already been playing for such a long time. They don't really want to achieve anything. They've already been to Worlds. They've done that, been there, got the t-shirt, and they're just kind of there for the vibes, maybe there for the money, maybe there to try and see if they can carry a team. And so their performance drops from what they were to what they are. So that's why I think going from low to high is better than going from high to low. Then you've got Evie, who is so far through his career that you think it's a high to a low, but also the region as a whole is weaker. So that he's going from a weaker region to a stronger region, which has a competitive side to it. He could have chilled in the LJL. I'm sure he has the skill to win again with DFM, kept going to play-ins, but he has higher aspirations, I think, in I want to win the LEC, I want to go through as a major region, I want to get into a group stage of Worlds, things like this. So I'm a bit confused as to like, my theory of things, because he's kind of like a
He's an
enigma in the middle.
anomaly.
He's an anomaly.
Yeah. But also, how many players really have gotten the opportunity to go from a smaller region to a bigger region? Very few.
Also very true. We saw some players from Turkey come through. I think Hoso Deodo went from LLA, I think, to the LCS.
Yeah.
There's a couple of examples, but not very often at all. But I would have imagined some kind of young LCK challengers, top laner, someone like Photon thrown in.
Yeah.
Jankos, a little bit of a language barrier helps him out with English. Jankos and Ruby, veterans helping out towards top, helping their rookie bots, rookie side lanes, a lot of, potential. But now you've got this rock, which I think is like, I don't know what to expect. I personally haven't watched Evi that much. I did play-ins like once, I think. I saw him come through MSI.
Yeah. But
So
again, the context of
good.
play-ins is what does that mean? Is the question, and that's why I'm like curious as to where he's actually going to end up, because there's a lot of, we've had teams lose in play-ins, so obviously play-ins means something. Obviously, it's not terrible, but like, what does that actually mean in the context of LCS? I'm not sure. Yeah. So if you're not certain about Evi, if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, I don't know what to think other than I'm excited because he's great and he's awesome on camera. That's kind of how I feel right now. We're just gonna have to see.
Yeah, I think he's like a team fight player. Would be my way of describing him. From my opinion, I don't see him as like a Jax, Camille, Fiora player.
No.
Side lane. I see him as like a Kennen, Ornn, Sejuani group up team fight kind of player. Nar, you said, I think.
Nar, Urgot. Yeah, he likes to play stuff that can like do a little bit more than just be a tank, but he definitely is somewhere in the middle. He is definitely not leaning towards the carry side 100% of the top lane spectrum.
Yeah, so I think that'll help really alleviate a lot of like pressure from top side into like allowing bots to explore and allow this rookie bot. So they've got kind of like this triple veteran top side of like, they know what they're doing, rookie bot. I like the formula. I trust Peter Dunn. I think he'll do well. For me personally, I put them in B tier.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But I think I've also got Mad in B tier. But like Mad is just coin flippy to the point where they could be insane or terrible.
Yep.
And Heretics is so solid to the point that I think they could progressively grow to become a strong team.
Heretics is the kind of team that if we were in our old format, I would have said they were fighting to make top 6. They would have been like, scraping into playoffs. But in our new format,
yeah, that's a very good point,
format, I don't know where to. I don't think they make top 4. I think that would be unreasonable and an overreach. But if they absolutely should make top 8. If they don't make top 8, it's horrible.
Easily they'll make
horrible.
top 8. You can't have a roster with players like Jankos and it not making that.
But this is the kind of team that in spring at least, winter at least, this first split, I think will be fighting to show us their level and like making it to best of 3s, but I do not think they will be making it to best of 5s.
Yep.
Could be wrong, but there's just too many teams with known quantities in our league right now that I could really bet on Heretics.
I just think a lot of big brands player-wise are in the league right now. You got format changes, there's a couple of people joining the broadcast, which would be really exciting, and the broadcast team's back, and we've got different kind of weekends, 3-day weeks, different splits.
Literally everything is different this year.
There's also big player brands, Reckless is back. Yep. Evi is also a really big brand from the World Championship. Dope. He's going to be really cool. I think there's just big brands coming back or joining the league, and big teams joining the league, and like there's a lot more eyes on the LEC.
Speaking of big players coming back, our final team for the day, G2 Esports, Hans Sama. Wow, this G2 lineup. Let's start with that G2 lineup. Where are you ranking them? Caedrel, zero context. Obviously, you'll get to explain yourself in a moment. What tier are they in?
Well, I wouldn't be G2 biased if I didn't put them in S tier, so I'm putting them in S tier. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, S tier. I think this team will be. I think
will be, or is going to come into the season as. You think this is an S tier team already?
Yep, I think so. I think so as well. I think that they're going to be an S tier team from the get go. The thing is.
Okay, I put them, for context, I put them A, and I felt almost bad putting them A, because I feel like I was giving them the benefit of the doubt too much.
Yeah, and some people say that I'm G2 biased, but dude, how am I biased? I don't know anyone on that team. I'm not here to defend myself, but I'm just going to say, I don't know anyone on that team, and I don't know anyone in the staff or anything. I have no reason to. But the reason I think this team will be strong is, one, Hans Sama. I think people are over-exaggerating how poorly he played in the LCS. Now, the biggest mistake he had when I was watching the games was his team fight positioning was awful. Either overextending or doing nothing. His lane phase was all right with core, but it was the team fights where he got really exposed. And I spoke to Bjergsen a little bit, and he was telling me that there was a lot of issues that he was having outside of the game, things that he couldn't control, which were affecting his performance a lot. And knowing those issues and him coming back over, those issues will go away. I know they'll go away. So I think he will be in top form. Yike is a player from LDLC. We were talking about X and DOS earlier.
Yeah, if you aren't keeping up with this year's offseason, LDLC is the new K Corp in terms of just basically their entire roster has been ripped apart and imported into our league.
Yeah. He was like hot market. Everyone wants him, like top of the list. Now that's a good and a bad thing. A player like Reeker last year was also quite high on the list for everyone in the offseason. But Yike has shown he is one of, if not the best jungler in the ERL. Absolute carry god. This guy was playing things like Bel'Veth, Kha'Zix, Wukong. He was, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I watched every single one of the game, but from what I've heard from all the players in the ERLs, he was like easily the best jungler.
Well, and I talked to Mickey because I was like, I don't know a lot about this guy. You know, I reached out for a lot of these LDLC players, watched a couple of VODs, reached out. Lore helped me out with the SK bottom lane, and Mickey helped me out a little bit with Yike. He said, super impressive. This is probably generally true for new rookies, but super impressive baseline game knowledge, significantly more than Mickey or a player of his generation to come up with. And, you know, as a strong mechanical player, he said he can play anything. You know, I know Mickey well enough that he would just not mention that if that wasn't the case. You know, he'll admit if there's any faults, but he said that like communication, he's not super vocal. He does not talk all the time, but he does what he needs to do. So I think this is going to be a very different player than Jankos, because as great as Yike is, as much hype as there is around Yike, the player that he's replacing is what I think makes his job so hard. You are replacing the most legendary European jungler. Yeah. Like, regardless of if you want to talk about the best of all time or whatever, blah, 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 I don't care. He is the most legendary European jungler.
And despite him having, like, I don't want to say a bad year, I don't think Jankos had the best of years last year. The whole team kind of, like, fell apart a little bit at internationals, especially. Yeah. But I think we're going through another change of, you know, we had El Yoya Inspired come in. That was the next generation. We're going to the next generation now.
Yep.
Of Yike and Shio.
Yike and Shio.
So I think this is like...
Can't talk about him today, though.
Yeah, this is like the next generation of junglers coming in, of like, this will be the EU representatives probably in the next few years, or maybe this year at Worlds. I think the team just has so many threats, and I think this is the team that I look at with the most threats of every team. You know, you think of teams like Fnatic where maybe they're playing double weak side lanes, you know, teams like Excel where they're playing maybe bot lane strong side, and similar to Rogue, they're playing double side lane strong side. I think everyone at the roster can carry. I think Broken Blade is, if you look at carry tops in Europe, Broken Blade is the carry top. Like the one person who is like more comfortable, more leaning towards carry tops. We saw things like Riven. We're not going to talk about that too much. But Fiora, Camille, he'll do it all. Yike carry jungler. Caps is Caps.
Caps is Caps.
I think when Caps is peaking, he is the best mid lane in the West.
And remember that for Caps, oftentimes, Caps' performances can be highly variable. And I don't want to just wipe away the same thing with Hans Sama, where like Caps' year, and Mickey, and this is why if you're skeptical about this roster, I understand, because Mickey had an okay year with Excel. He had a lot of games where he sprinted it. His best champion in the year was Yuumi.
Yeah, which is 5 Yuumi against Fnatic.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're skeptical about these players, I understand. But I think the big boon for me is that Caps and Mickey have a ton of history together, and that they are both players that, in my eyes, from knowing both these players pretty well on a personal level, do much better when they get along on a friendship level with their teammates. Now, there are players who want to show up to the office, do their job, go home. Some players do great in that capacity. Whippo, Björk are great examples of those players who have that clear separation, perform well in those environments. Caps and Mickey are guys who like the 5 dudes chilling in a house, playing games together, Band of Brothers things, and they've done it successfully in the past.
And I think Broken Blade fits into that as well.
He did. We saw them, the 1 a.m. basketball, the shirtlessness, like the G2 environment has always looked at its best when the players get along really well on an individual level. And
I saw a little reel. I think LEC was doing reels with the pros when they were here at Media Days a few days ago, and Yike said, they asked Yike, what's the most important thing of a team? He's like, environment. Like, everyone's happy. And he was like giggling to himself a bit as if he knows that G2 is having a little bit of a joke around with him already. So the vibes are good, probably. The only kind of concern I have is Caps hasn't been as much claps as he used to be. I think we said this last year too.
It's like spring finals and that run when they went on that win streak in spring where we're like, oh my God, he's back. But it was a lot of Ari Jarvan every game. And we didn't really get to see that same thing for nearly as much of summer as I would have liked.
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, for the sake of Europe as a whole, you know, Claps does slowly come back, and hopefully for G2 as well. Yeah. And like he does have those moments where everything just comes together and then that's activated. And I think their bot lane will, I mean, it's Hans Mickey. You talk about vibes from Caps and Mickey. Hans Mickey are OG friends. You know, OG like bot lane from ages ago. 2017 was 6 years ago.
Dude, Hans Mickey X. Can you in the face of Vladimir and Swain bot lane, they played Draven Morgana every day On broadcast, our narrative, they don't care about the meta. They're
6
breaking
years
the meta.
ago.
Behind the scenes, we know that it's probably just because he didn't play Vlad very well. But you know what I mean? Like these guys murder people in lane when they play well. And it's hard for me not to get excited. And this is part of my like, I've been here for so long that when I think of players, it's the rose-tinted glasses. I see back to the sexy, shiny moments. But this is the caveat, because you're putting them in S and I would put them in A. If you want to put this team in B tier, as a fan, I get it. Because last year for Mickey X was not his best year. Last year was not Caps' best year. Last year was not Hans Sama's best year.
True.
If you're like, you can be on the opposite side of the coin from us where you're like, I do not believe that these players will bounce back and hit that ceiling that I've seen before. I think they're still going to struggle. If that is what you believe, you're totally fair to rate G2 lower. But I think both you and I are in the camp of, I believe these players will bounce back. I believe these players will get back to their peaks or close to their peaks. And in that case, it is hard to imagine this team doing anything worse than top 4. Top 4 is a must for this team in this first split.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And the last 2 things I'll say about this roster is, number one, the one thing I'm a bit scared of is how Yike will perform on stage.
Sure, 100%.
Because we've often seen people play insane in scrims, and it just takes a long time for them to get on stage and play like they do. 2 examples, Upset. I played with him in Schalke 2018. Scrims, absolute monster. It took him about 2 or 3 years to get like full scrim Upset on stage, and then we saw it finally, like one of the best ADs in the league. Shout out to Upset. You know, he's like the Niski of 2022 now, 2023 now.
Go?
Is he going to come back in spring? Some teams are like, please, Mr. Upset, come pick your Zeri and get us to playoffs. We'll see. And the second thing, so just more on that. Hopefully Yike doesn't have any issues on stage. I know that none of the other players really do. I just hope he kind of flourishes and blossoms within the first few weeks and he gets really comfortable. I think the environment he's in will help him do that. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what Yike will do. And the second thing is off-season rumors, scrim rumors, right? I don't want to get too bogged down by scrim rumors, but G2, you've seen it around the internet, you know, they're popping off in scrims, they're destroying everyone, la 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 la. That was the same case last year. I think it was similar. I don't know if it's G2 or Vitality. Someone was destroying scrims. And don't over-index on it too much. I think I've said this on my own stream. Like when we were in 2019 off-season, coming into 2020, we scrimmed. We went like 5-0 against Origin, like 4-1 against Schalke, like 5-0 to all these teams. And we went like 26-4 or something in the week. And we're like, we're the best team ever. 2 or 3 weeks into the LEC, we're like 4-3. And we're like, well, we're on positive win rate. 4 weeks later, we're like 6-6, 7-7. We're like, well, actually those scrims, it doesn't mean anything. No one really cares. Like everyone's just trying things anyway.
I will say the good news about this format specifically as you transition to best of 3, a lot of the volatility will decrease in terms of deciding. Like you will feel much more confident in our top 4 in winter split, I think, than you probably will generally have ever felt about top 6 in the LEC, is my hope in the previous splits, because those teams will have had to win 2 best of 3s each to make it to that top 4. They will have had to beat, short of like, depending on how the groups are drawn, et cetera, blah, 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 anything outside of that, like they will have actually had to not just win a couple of cheeky best of 1s or have an upset against a big team that was already qualified and maybe wasn't trying their hardest. You know what I mean? Like they will really have to, you will know and feel much more confident about what you can expect from a team that has made it to top 4 in this new format.
Yeah, agreed. Also, last thing I want to touch on is, we touched on Peter Dunn, also Dylan Falco. I think Dylan Falco has been around for a while. You know, he's been to World Finals. And I think at MSI specifically, we saw the Falco effect. You know, Dylan was popping out drafts left and right. So I think coaching staff is getting more and more important, because I think you've heard pro players talk about how important draft has been getting and like how drafts can just be lost or won just from the pick ban phase. So I think coaching staff very important. Rogue coaching staff, Koi coaching staff has been really consistent. Peter Dunn has been hyped up. You know, I think Dylan Falco has also been doing a fantastic job at G2. It's very hard to gauge how much a coach is doing, but when you actually realize how good certain drafts are, they have to stand out a lot for you to notice it in the first place.
Well, yeah, and obviously without being behind the scenes, it's hard because it's really easy to put a top laner into a box of in-game things and say, this is what he does well, this is what he does poorly. Whereas a coach, even the role in itself, the title doesn't specify really at all what they do. Because what different coaches do for different teams is so completely different in how they function. And I think one of the things that I love that from talking to G2 boys, from looking at what Dylan's done, that he does is he's really good about enabling player creativity in a way where he doesn't shut it down if they're not going to run with it. He encourages and he leverages player creativity well. That's why I think he works so well with Caps. Why, he did that well back on Fnatic. Why he did it well. Yeah, and look, sometimes, as much as we like to talk about, sometimes it's grief. But
is it going to win us the game?
But also understanding that a relationship is a give and take, and sometimes you have to be willing to say, all right, I don't believe in it, but if you really trust it, like he did in that instance, we can do it. And also know sometimes that that gives you the right to be no, this game you cannot pick Vayne Caps, And I think that towing that line where you can be a figure of authority and carry that authority without needing it to be there all the time is something that coaches are always going to struggle with in League of Legends. And that's something that, from what I have seen, Dylan has done well. So shout out to Dylan.
Like the Anivia pick.
Pick me Anivia.
Pick me Anivia. Well, another thing I'll say, a bit more broad topic, is Koi was the fourth team, I think. Rogue was the fourth team to ever win an LEC split. Fnatic, Alliance, G2 were the ones that were always winning.
Alliance,
oh, Mad
G2,
Lions.
Mad Lions.
So they were the fifth. But in recent years, different teams are winning the splits. It's not just G2 Fnatic all the time anymore. Fnatic haven't won in ages. G2 won in spring. It's just been Mad Lions and Koi. And with this new format and all these new teams and all these new players, I'm actually really excited because I think anyone from A tier upwards could probably win a split. Even the B tier teams have chances. As to me, Mad and Heretics are the B tier teams, and one's a little bit coin flippy, and the other one could upset and be a dark horse and grow throughout the year. But I think our league will be very competitive, and I think that our league will be not too dominated by one singular team. Now, that's a good thing sometimes, because when you go to internationals, you have the faith, and you believe in that team, and they're going to perform. And all your weight rests on their shoulders, similar to the old days of just G2 doing it. But I think a competitive scene. I also think the last thing I'll say is junglers especially. For example, Malrang brought this crazy non-stop ganking style to EU, and everyone had to get a kick up the arse and figure out how to play against it. I think Bo is going to bring a similar style of just psychotic jungling, non-stop LPL action. So we got a little bit of LCK jungling, a little bit of LPL jungling. We got Photon and Chasey, LCK top laners, or Korean top laners, sorry. So it gives you that experience, and it lets you play against different styles before you go to an international. And so you're not so surprised anymore. So I think overall the region's getting a bit of a buff from all of these different players from different regions.
I agree. All it takes for a style to take off like Malrang is one player who's insanely good at playing that style can define a meta, and LPL top laners, let's just say you drop the 3 best LPL top laners into 3 random LEC teams. It would, and assume that there's no communication barriers, whatever, it would destroy our entire league in terms of meta.
A cheeky 369 wayward in there.
It would just change literally everything. And that is, credit to those players. And that's an example, the last really good example we have from that other than Malrang is G2 2019, is you obviously had the funnel meta, but then you had people willing to break the meta. Shout out to Origin, who were playing the Blitzcrank Varus to break the funnel meta. And you have these individual players who will find these angles in the case of G2 and
break the mold.
It's just crazy. And that's one of the things I love seeing. That said, those are our 5 teams for the day: XL, SK Gaming, G2
that was
Esports,
nice. Little deep
Heretics,
dive on them all.
Koi. Yeah, we're going to talk about the next 5 teams next week in the next episode. Caedrel will not be here, but Yamato will be joining me. We're going to talk a little bit more about Upset departing, a tragic thing. Reckless coming back. His thoughts on those other 5 teams. But we asked for Twitter questions, and I want to make sure that we get to some of them. We asked for hot takes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Go on, hit us.
So first off, half the people in the chat have no idea what the new format is because people keep saying they're not going to make top 6. Again, top 6, if you haven't caught on so far. Again, watch the format explainer video. I'll ask our YouTube team to link it in the chat. If not, it is on the LEC. Link it in the description. It is on the LEC channel. Please watch it and understand it. But it is top 8 and top 4 that matter respectively. Top 6 is no longer important. Felix at @DearFelix_S says Heretics will be top 3. Based on what we talked about, it doesn't seem plausible to me.
Like I said, I think in winter split, I doubt it. By summer split, perhaps spring, I can see it. But otherwise, I don't think off the gates they will, in my opinion at least. Yeah.
Wow. I wanted to read that one, but their name is not great. So I'll read their Twitter handle and not their name. @NecroAura says,
hang on a second.
EU's weakest role by average skill is support, but by best player we have is top. Our best player is top. Is that what they're trying to say? We have great supports.
I think we have great supports.
I think we have great supports.
I don't know. Best player is top?
I don't know. But let's just talk about that because top is our weakest role.
Top is our weakest.
I think we agree on that.
I think so.
And support is hands down one of our strongest. I think
Historically, probably our strongest. Like the Hilly Mickey days,
Mickey era,
and the Kaiser
very
era.
good. Kaiser coming up. Trimby's getting better.
Trimby's on the rise now as well. I think we've always had at least one or two supports which are popping off. Hilly's had a bit of a weak year. Mickey didn't make it to Worlds. Trimby carried the mental.
Yeah,
but
and
2019, 2018, it was the Hilly Mickey show.
And if we were in Chanter meta forever, I think there would be more ground to say that. But that would be true of any support that wasn't Korean or from the LPL or the LCK. But I think that we actually have insane supports.
Yeah, I agree. Even like the 2016 days of Mythy. I think Mythy Sven were like, our boys Origin making the semis. Yellow Star days. I think you can go back and say we had some good supports.
Ooh, I'm going to give you this one as a final one here.
Okay.
Because we've gone too long. Classic has always gone over time. Hot take from Quintero at Quintero.
Yep.
Just going to read his hot take. He has a whole tweet here. Fnatic will be like 2021 G2.
I mean, if you think about it, in 2022, that summer playoffs run, the only reason they made it was Upset carried them over the finish line 2 or 3 games in a row, and the tiebreaker playing Zeri Lulu, Zeri Yumi, and single-handedly got them to playoffs in the first place.
Yep.
That top side was falling apart, and Upset was the one who had to carry it. They don't have Upset anymore. And Reckless is, like I said, not the player who's going to stand up and say, I want to counterpick bot, I want to play Caitlyn, I want to play Kalista, I want to play a pushing lane, I want to play to kill. He is more of a reserved, like, you let me know where you need me. I can drop to 4-5. I can take a bad matchup. I can take whatever you need me to do. Very flexible. But I also think Wunder is in the same boat. I don't think Wunder's the person who's going to say, first pick me Fiora, So I worry for their side lanes in terms of who's to carry.
Yep.
Because Humanoid is very inconsistent in regular seasons and steps up when it matters. So, and you look around and you're like, so who are we playing towards? So I think one of them needs to take that mental. I don't think they'll be like 2021 G2 because 2021 G2 dominated regular seasons and then bombed out in best of 5s, I think.
Yeah, they were. Well, they didn't even down. It was rough.
I remember their spring was really strong. They had like
a
really good record in spring. I can't remember very well. That was ages ago. It's almost 2 years ago now. Crazy, isn't it? But I think Fnatic do have an issue of their own of figuring out like who's going to carry games because we'll see how the meta goes. If it goes into like what it looks like a Caitlyn Varus meta. Maybe it's okay because he can just pick Varus or Ashe or whatever it may be. But it's also like Heimerdinger support, Jhin support, Karma is still OP in range support meta. And I don't know if that's Rux's wheelhouse. I think he likes getting on those engages and roaming around. So I don't know. Meta is still a big question. We're rating these teams without knowing even what the meta is going to look like yet. So it's kind of...
I mean, it's blind rating. And I will say if you take this to heart and you're like, wow, you guys are morons. Like, maybe we'll look like morons. Maybe we'll look like geniuses. But if we're completely right about every single team, we guessed where the variables would end up, and we got correct. If we're completely wrong, we guessed where we followed where we thought a lot of the variables would end up, and we got right. I mean, it's a crapshoot, to be honest with you, with this little information. If you want a prediction of who's going to win a best of 5 at the end of the season, then you can be like, you guys were dumb. But at the start of the season,
mate, if SK win the split, just give me. I'll take it on the chin. Jesus Christ, absolute
bro,
legends.
If SK win the split, we're gonna do like I'm not doing a bet, but like
we're gonna do a what is it? The dance where you have like the legs. On the bar. What is it? The little kicks.
Okay, river dance?
Yeah, a little bit of that.
River dance?
We'll do a little bit of a river dance, yeah.
To celebrate. Isn't that Irish though? I was gonna say don't like going to the UK. I don't know. I'm not trying
we'll
to
do
piss people
off. We'll do a dance on a bar somewhere.
Yeah, if SK win.
And we'll record it and put it on Euphoria.
We'll see what happens. Again, Caedrel, you called it out earlier. If you're on YouTube, it's your time to shine. If you've been watching us this whole time, let us know your tier list. S to D tier. Do not make an S plus. Do not make an S minus.
Don't make a D plus either. That's in Korea.
Blah, 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 blah. Don't want any of it. Don't care. S to D. If you're like, this team should be F, just put them in D tier. Your S tier is now your A tier. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Just, if you want to give us any justification, if there's any info you think that we're missing, we're always happy to hear that. In the meantime, Caedrel will be absent for episode 2. He'll be back, though, for the rest of the season, episode 3 onward. Yamato joining me on the next episode. We're going to talk more about Fnatic.
Do you have a special guest as well?
And the other 4 remaining teams. I can't remember if I'm allowed to announce the other guests yet.
Special guest. Ooh. It's me.
Remember.
It's me with a mask on.
A new permanent addition to the on-air talent
His name's Pedro.
Permanent. A new addition for this year. I don't know if permanent I don't know. Yeah, permanent, whatever. A new addition to the talent team this year, alongside Yamato, will be joining us as well. So we'll have 3 people on the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 1. Thank you for all the Twitter questions. We'll also look at some more of those next week.
It's going to be a banger year.
Banger year. We're super late for this meeting we have to go to, but that doesn't matter.
Missed it by about half an hour.
Last thing, the formats are confusing. If you're more confused after this podcast, I totally get it. There is an article and there is a format explainer video. Go check them out. If you have any follow-up questions, you can message me on Twitter, and I will try to explain it to you. Yeah. Because I do understand
also, if you
but
DM Daniel Drakos, you get a secret beta code to the League MMO. So make sure you spam him for DMs and ask him for them.
I turned my DMs off, so I'm immune to the Why would you say that? This has been EUphoria Season 11, Episode 1. We missed you. We're so glad to be back.
Discord, somewhere.
Stop it.
Spam him.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.